So good morning and thank you for taking the time to attend our presentation, Word of Mouth, Oral Assessment in the Post-Pandemic Era. In this presentation, we will examine the use and effectiveness of oral assessment before and during the pandemic and potential use after the pandemic. We also acknowledge Dr. Samantha May, our Social Sciences Department Head, for her contributions to the research for this presentation. We have defined oral assessment simply and broadly as any assessment of student learning that is conducted wholly or in part by word of mouth. At Alexander College, our instructors have used a variety of graded oral assessments, including oral participation, presentations, oral tests, class discussions, class debates, and student-led seminars. In our study, we examined the role of assessment prior to the pandemic. What have we learned from using oral assessment during the pandemic? And the best practices we want to take with us for oral assessment post-pandemic. To gather information for this study, a digital survey was sent to our 87 instructors during the spring 2021 term. The survey consisted of 16 questions, 11 open-ended, 2 multiple choice, and 3 Likert scale. The responses were then grouped under distinct themes. From this, we examined the data to figure out what the responses tell us and compare these with literature. 36% of our instructors, 31 of 87, responded to the survey. We have responses from instructors in different departments as shown in the figure below. Although the percentage of responses is lower than what we would like as instructors were busy during a compressed spring and summer term, the response rate was sufficient to proceed with qualitative research. Additional conversations with faculty correspond with our research results. It is interesting to note that 81% of instructors used graded oral assessment prior to the pandemic, and this increased to 87% during the pandemic. As can be seen in the graph, instructors use a wide range of oral assessments with oral participation, presentations, and class discussions being the most popular. The pie chart on the left shows 67% of instructors, indicated in orange and blue, noted a change in perception of oral assessment during the pandemic. The orange indicates 35% reported a significant change. Furthermore, instructors reported that oral assessment was more effective during the pandemic. Prior to the pandemic, 48% of instructors found oral assessment effective or very effective, while during the pandemic, 67% of instructors found oral assessment effective or very effective. The bar graph on the right illustrates this shift in thinking.
Okay, our findings support previous studies that indicate oral assessment, although quite common, played a relatively minor role in overall assessment value in much of North American undergraduate curriculum prior to the March 2020 pivot to virtual delivery. More specifically, although oral assessments were frequently part of our undergraduate courses, they were not particularly highly valued. They accounted for less of the overall percentage of the course grade. There are, of course, exceptions to that generalization. In modern language disciplines, for example, oral and written work are equally important and closely intertwined in language learning. In other disciplines, however, although oral assessment is common, it has often been taken less seriously, and it received much less weight than written work. Why was that the case? Well, the traditionally marginal status of oral assessment could very well be attributed to a variety of considerations. For example, survey responses cited time management as a logistical deterrent to conducting oral exams. The epistemological status of the written word in Western educational culture was also a factor. Numerous comments demonstrated an assumption that students' verbal activity is an indication of competence and engagement rather than knowledge and understanding. The secondary role of oral assessment in the pre-pandemic era was also related to concerns about communication apprehension among our students. In survey responses, this theme emerged through references to shyness, introversion, nervousness, and anxiety. Substantial research on communication apprehension among college and university students confirm that fear of public speaking can have a profound impact on an individual's educational experience, and that anxiety over public speaking may be particularly acute among students who speak English as an additional language. Amid the widespread shift to online delivery over the past 18 months, the role of oral assessment at Alexander College again reflects patterns elsewhere. A notable change occurred in the use of oral examination. Whereas oral exams were rarely used before the pandemic, oral tests and retests became a common means of addressing concerns about academic integrity. Thus, the spoken word assumed new status as a means of verifying knowledge and understanding. Moreover, survey results indicate that oral assessment in general became a subject of experimentation and innovation during virtual delivery. An increased use of student-led seminars is notable, and while the overall use of oral presentations appears to have declined slightly, related comments were often favorable. One instructor reported that oral presentations brought the course to life. Students shared their research verbally and also created notes to be shared with the class. These notes and the verbal content of presentations were part of course material to be tested later. Virtual delivery also stretched the definition of oral participation. Technically a form of written communication, chat activity in the Zoom rooms simulates the spontaneous, emotive qualities of speech while alleviating anxiety about public speaking. Instructors noted that chat supports direct messaging, in-class polls and quizzes, and content that can be saved. Overall, survey responses indicated that chat activity has meaningful pedagogical value.
Thanks, Lindsey, and morning, everyone. As we move into summary mode, we want to acknowledge that overall, our survey results indicate that instructors' experience of online oral assessment during the past 18 months should not be idealized. Challenges related to time management remained evident, especially for oral testing. And one of our survey respondents also noted that the results of oral tests or retests can be inconclusive. It's evident that the past 18 months challenged post-secondary educators at a level of magnitude that's difficult to comprehend without experiencing those challenges firsthand. Like healthcare workers, educators are among the heroes in this upheaval, this journey that we've been on, and they deserve to be applauded for their perseverance during difficult times. What's more remarkable, they responded to such challenges in a spirit of innovation, seeking improvement amid hardship. Amid the developments we've mentioned, we also noted respondent comments on the refinement of rubrics and weighting for oral activities. Several instructors who adopted various forms of oral assessment reported that on average, 40 to 45% of their total course grades involved oral activities. And it's through comments such as these that we begin to see oral assessment emerging from the shadow of written assessment. And the most inspiring aspect of all this is that opportunities for future practice are in fact evident in both face-to-face and in online teaching environments. Indeed, looking ahead, we want to highlight survey responses that align with significant theoretical premises. Our last presentation noted constructivist theories of knowledge, and we'll do the same in our presentation. In a cluster of comments on oral examination, the emergent need to uphold academic integrity through verbal interrogation is surpassed by a desire to explore and enrich knowledge through dialogue. Reflecting constructivist theories of knowledge making, Survey comments indicate that oral assessment can provide instructors and students with a unique opportunity to explore and build knowledge together through structured conversations conducted in a spirit of mutual inquiry. Here, we see an appreciation that oral assessment by its very nature is more synchronistic, relational, and flexible than written assessment. Survey respondents also acknowledged that increased use of oral assessment can contribute to the formation of a learning community. To address a pre-pandemic pattern of low engagement in historical material and to build a sense of community in the online environment, a history instructor implemented oral presentations for the first time. This development ensured that each student anchored some part of the course content and had opportunities to both lead and support others. And we noted other responses that offered very similar comments about opportunities to build a learning community through oral assessment. It is clear from our survey responses that an informed use of oral assessment can contribute to a richly interactive and mutually supportive learning environment. Furthermore, several respondents also noted that oral assessment contributes to a holistic education by building readiness for employment and citizenship. This finding is supported by the research of Huxham, Campbell, and Westwood, who observed that virtually all graduates will attend job interviews and will have to defend their ideas in work in verbal exchanges, whilst most will never sit another written exam after they graduate. Accordingly, Huxham, Campbell, and Westwood note that oral assessment can be an important tool in shaping professional identity. In conclusion, our findings do not suggest that oral assessment should replace written assessment. Rather, our research supports what Cheung refers to as a balanced diet of assessment strategies. Such balance reflects universal design for learning principles, which encourage multiple forms of student action, expression, and engagement. Our research also serves as a reminder that oral assessment has special relevance for students who speak English as an additional language. For these students, the challenges of public speaking are matched by its role in academic and personal growth. I see, Alex, we're just approaching our 15 minutes now. So in wrapping up, we'll note that a variety of resources can facilitate pursuit of the findings presented here. In particular, we'd like to draw attention to a webpage published by the University of Pittsburgh on speaking in the disciplines. There's great material there. And it's also worth noting that the University of Guelph has a webpage that provides extensive information on the logistics of implementing oral assessment across the disciplines. And that brings us to the end of our presentation. We'll display our references too, and back over to you, Alex.
Yes, thank you very much, Steve, and Kelly and Lindsay, for an interesting presentation. We do have time for a question or two. Would anyone like to pose a question for this group? Okay, Pedro, would you like to go ahead?
You. Yes, thank you, Alexandra. Thank you, everyone, for this wonderful presentation. As we've had conversations around exploring oral assessment, one of the things that come up, one of our academic council members spent a lot of time in Belgium, and apparently the system set up there for all evaluations to be oral, which is quite interesting. She mentioned, though, that there is a component there. There is a component that needs to be considered, which is the witnessing of the oral examination and how that complicates things and is somehow needed to be considered because of the resources. Any thoughts around that? Oral assessment one-on-one would not have the evidence to reassess in case there was an issue between the faculty and the student. What are your thoughts?
Okay, I can take this one. So when I've had oral exams in my courses, what I did was, and I recommend to all instructors who are doing oral exams, is to make sure it's recorded, so that the instructor is able to revisit any questions or uncertainties he or she has about, what's actually going on. So the instructors would have a list of questions before the test that they can ask them. So this could be either questions from, let's say, a project that they did, or or on the course material. And then they would randomly select questions from that list, so that each exam would be slightly different. So the first student would not get a significant advantage over the others. So hopefully answering your question there, that the recording would provide evidence, so that if a student feels that he or she really did get the correct answer or not, they can watch the recording together, and the instructor can highlight to the student where did the explanation go wrong.
Would that be Kelly? Would that be audio only or video as well?
I did mine with audio and video.
And are there any privacy concerns when using video? Is there a policy around deleting or keeping for a certain amount of time?
Well, for me, I've deleted them after the period ends, where I said the student can, I'm thinking what's the word, can dispute the grade. But after that period, I've deleted them all. But yes, but that is good. Very good question. And institutions should have a policy regard to deleting or not having access to student work after it's been formally graded and completed.